right, ladies and gentlemen, we are looking at word problems using right triangle trig. Okay, we're going to draw a picture for each of these. We're going to use, what thing are we going to use? We're going to keep using our trig functions. Does anybody have what is the way that we remember what to do for the trig functions? SOHCAHTOA. So, I've seen some people write it this way, and this way is great. Sine is opposite over hypotenuse. Cosine, adjacent over hypotenuse. And tangent, opposite over adjacent. That's another way to write SOHCAHTOA. Okay? I usually write it like this. But if writing it that way helps, that's totally fine. Okay. With word problems, I am going to strongly suggest you read them first before you draw anything. Then you read it a second time to draw your picture. Okay? Then go through it. All right? So let's read it. A damsel is in distress and is being held captive in a tower. Her knight in shining armor is on the ground below with a ladder. When the knight stands 15 feet from the base of the tower and looks up at his precious damsel, the angle of elevation to her window is 60 degrees. How long does the ladder have to be? Okay. So I know I'm going to have a ladder here. I'm going to have a tower. All right. So we all know it's going to be a right triangle, right? We're hoping that that tower and the ground meet at 90 degrees. Otherwise, it's like the Leaning Tower of Pisa, right? It's not going to be too stable. All right? The knight stands 15 feet from the base. Where does that 15 feet go? On the bottom, on the ground, right? An angle of elevation of 60 degrees. Where does 60 degrees go? Right in here. And what are we trying to find? How long does the ladder have to be? Which one's the ladder? There's the ladder. So we're trying to find the hypotenuse. 15 is my adjacent. Notice I only labeled 2 of the sides. I didn't label all 3. Just 2 of them. Because then I look A and H. I come up here and I'm going to use cosine. So remember, I go cosine, and then what do I put next to the cosine? 60. I put the angle, and then what comes next? What comes right after the 60? What do I need right here? An equal sign. Good. And then I'm going to put, let's look. 15 over x. Remember, because it's A over H. I know we always want to put the x on top because it makes our life so much easier when we actually do the problem, but make sure you do it right because you're going to get a totally different answer. Okay. Now that I have the x on the bottom, how do I get rid of it? It's being divided, so we're going to multiply. We cancel out those x's. We've got x cosine 60 equals 15. Now what do? X and cosine 60 are doing what to each other? Multiplying. What's the opposite of multiplication? Division. So I'm going to put x equals 15 cosine 60 in my calculator. Okay? I've heard Mr. McGregor say this to his students. He's like, okay, when you see cosine 60 equals 15 over x, just think of switching x and 60. And then it's a little less writing for you guys. Okay, it's cross multiplying anyways, so we could skip right to that step if you see it. If you think you can go from here to here, that's fine. If you need to go to all this step in between, that's fine too. Now we're going to put in our calculator. 15 divided by cosine 60. We still remember how to get to cosine. We hit the trig button. I'm going to get x equals 30 feet. How we doing? All right. So I'm going to look at this backwards, and I want you guys to raise your hand or like put your thumb up if that's the hardest part for you. Is actually putting this in the calculator the hardest part of this problem for you? Anybody? Is solving it for x a hard part, especially when x is on the bottom? Is that the hardest part for a couple of you? What about figuring out if it's sine, cosine, or tangent? Is that hard? A couple of you? All right. What about figuring out adjacent or hypotenuse or opposite? Is that still a little bit difficult? And who thinks drawing the picture is the hardest part? Yeah. Okay, so I think what we're going to start with for number 2 is I want you guys to draw the picture. Actually do it. If you have a pencil, it's great. You can always erase. Don't be scared. If you have a pen, just do it on the side. There's enough room. You could do 2. Suppose you're flying a kite. Just listen the first time. Don't write anything down. I'm going to read it twice. Suppose you're flying a kite and it gets caught at the top of a tree. You let out all 100 feet of string for the kite, and the angle the string makes with the ground is 75 degrees. Instead of worrying about to get your kite back, you wonder, how tall is that tree? Okay, let's read it again. Suppose you're flying a kite and it gets caught in the top of the tree. You let out all 100 feet of string, and the angle the string makes with the ground is 75 degrees. How tall is the tree? Draw your picture. Where's the 100 feet go? Where's the 75 degrees go? Where does your x go? What are you trying to find? Try it right now. Everybody try to draw number 2. You can always erase or scribble it out. Where does your 100 feet of string? Remember, your kite is caught up in a tree. All right, overall, I'm seeing a lot of people make huge improvements with drawing their pictures. Okay, so my kite is in a tree. We know that we've let out 100 feet of string. 100 goes here because my kite is not on the ground, right? It's up in the tree, so it's got to be at an angle like that, right? My angle with the ground is 75 degrees. I'm trying to find the tree. Okay. What is x for 75? Is it the opposite of 75? Is it adjacent to 75 degrees? Or is it the hypotenuse? And then 100 is the hypotenuse. Okay, so I've got O and H. Which trig function do I need? Sine. So who wants to tell me? How do I write this out? Good. Now I'm going to just times that 100 on both sides. So I'm going to go 100 sine 75 equals x. I put that in my calculator. And I get x equals 96.6 feet. That's a pretty tall tree. Okay. All right. Let's go to number 3. This time I want you to try to do the whole thing on your own. Whole thing on your own. And maybe I don't. Hold on. A submarine traveling at a depth of 200 feet dives at an angle of 15 degrees with respect to the line parallel to the water surface. It travels a horizontal distance of 1,500 feet during the dive. What is the depth of the submarine after the dive? Okay, so I don't want you to do that one on your own. Because I want to talk about what this looks like before we do that. All right. First of all, we're already underwater, right? So let's say here's the surface of the water. Okay? We're already 250 feet under in our little submarine. Okay? And then we want to dive, okay, 15 degrees. So we want here and here to be 15 degrees with respect to the horizontal. Okay? And then we're right here. So I want to know if we've traveled 1,500 feet, how far down I am. So whatever my answer is, I need to add how much to it? 250. Okay? This is my adjacent. This is my opposite. That's a weird problem. Okay? So I'm going to use tan of 15 degrees equals opposite over adjacent. And then I'm going to put that in my calculator. $1,500 tan 15 equals x. So x equals 401.9. Is that what we got? When you did hit 1,500 times tan of 15, did you get 401.9? Yeah? Okay, and now we have to add 250 to it. And I'm going to get 651.9 feet. Okay. All right. Brother Bob and Tom Katz buy a tent that has a center pole of 6.25 feet high. If the sides of the tent are supposed to make a 50-degree angle with the ground, how wide is the tent? So this is a tricky one. You ready? So I think the tent looks like this. Here's my center pole. There are the sides of my tent along the ground. Do we agree that it looks like that? Okay. This makes 50 degrees. Okay? The sides make 50 degrees. My center pole is 6.25. So I'm going to find x, this bottom part, but then I'm just going to have to multiply that by 2 to get the whole length, right? Because I'm finding half my tent to make the right triangle, and so then to find my other half. Because tents don't look like this, right? Has anybody been in a tent or seen a tent that looked like a right triangle? No, they look like both sides, right? And the center pole, how could it be in the center if it wasn't on the other side? So x is my opposite, adjacent, or hypotenuse. And 6.25 is my, okay. So I'm going to go tan of 50 equals opposite over adjacent. So do you want me to do just the switching thing? We're okay with that? We can go x equals 6.25 divided by tan of 50. And so x equals 5.24. Okay, but that's just 1/2, so I have to do what to this? 5.24 times 2. Equals the total width of the tent, which is 2.48 feet. Okay, you guys ready to try that back? You got lots of time. You got lots of time to ask questions. Okay?
Yeah.